Hi there. So today I'm with Rosario Salerno, who is the creator of a wonderful looking new tarot deck. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you, Chloe. Hi to you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you.
I'm just looking at your studio behind you, and it looks absolutely fascinating. It looks like somewhere that I'd like to go and kind of peer at the bookcases. And I don't know whether you like people touching your sculptures or if they're only for looking.
Well, yeah, I guess you can touch it. Yeah, it's
My
no
mother
problem.
always goes around touching sculptures wherever she goes, and sometimes it's really not allowed. But it's like, I think when you're a sculptor, as you are, then when you're actually creating it, I imagine that you touch it as you go along. So that is kind of part of what is in the work, I imagine.
Yeah, totally. Like sculptures live in our space, so it's an instinct to touch them. I guess now you can't do that in a museum
Yeah.
because the too high amount of people who would do that and destroy it. But I'm sure that in the past they would love to touch them. They would
Yeah.
do it without problems.
Yeah. Well, it's like you look at Michelangelo's David and you just wonder, oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And I think there's something of the same feel actually in some of the characters in your tarot deck. I mean, for example, when I look at the Fool, it's like, oh, wow, he looks really, he looks really touchable somehow. I hadn't thought of it in terms of your sculpture, but it's true, he does.
Yeah, I guess that's the effect.
So I would love to hear a little bit about how you first got into the tarot.
Yeah, this story started when I was a teenager actually. I remember that my sister, like somebody gave her the first deck of tarot cards that I have ever seen before. And of course she was older than me, so she started to play with it and started to learn how to read it. And I was fascinated, maybe because I love images in general and art. This was like an Egyptian version of the classical, not Marseille style, like more into like the weight one.
Uh huh.
But yeah, and it attracted my curiosity, and I started to try to learn it myself. Until one day, because we were like pretty Christian Catholic, and my sister told her priest about it,
Um,
and the priest said that, yeah, he just said that cards and all this stuff is tools used by the devil in
oh
order to,
no.
yeah, that sort of thing. So she threw it away, and I
Oh.
was I was disappointed. She explained to me the reason, and at the moment, I was a teenager. I was starting to become a rebel.
You're like, oh, in that case, I'll use them even more.
Exactly. But in that moment, actually, like, it was thrown away. I
Yeah.
didn't even have the money to go buy a new one. I just forgot about until actually some years ago. I think it started 3 or 4 years ago, just before I started to draw my own project.
Uh huh.
Oh yeah, it happened this way. Like this journalist who asked me some questions about my artwork. She
Mm-hmm.
saw my tattoos, and I have some tattoos on my arms, and she told me that they look like the Morgan Greer tarot deck
Uh huh.
drawings. So when she said that my drawings were looking like a tarot deck, this was like a hint, and I thought,
A
wow,
reminder. Yeah.
tarot. It's been a while, and actually, it would be a very good idea to make my own
Mm-hmm.
version of it. Also, because when you have to draw, you need a theme, you need some sort of project
An
that connects.
inspiration.
Exactly, an inspiration, and tarot is a big inspiration for so many reasons:
Mm-hmm.
symbols and beautiful images, the antiquity, and
Mm-hmm.
so on. So from that moment, I thought, oh, I'm gonna start. At least I'm gonna do the 22 major arcana,
Uh huh.
and then I will probably drop it. I thought at the time because 78.
It's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, but then something happened. Like I moved out from Berlin, where
Mm-hmm.
where I've lived for many years. So I got back in Italy, and I had so much time to work. Suddenly, I didn't have to go, I don't know, partying or sort of stuff
Mm-hmm.
to do in a big city. events, blah blah blah. So I started this project, and I actually finished it quite fast. Like in 2 years, I drew 78 cards.
Uh-huh.
I thought it was impossible at the beginning, but then
Amazing, yeah. And you took as your inspiration the Tarot de Marseille style decks. What sort of led you in that direction, seeing as your first introduction to tarot had been with a weight style deck?
yeah, when I started to research about which deck would be the most inspiring, I looked it up and I noticed that the Tarot de Marseille are known as the most ancient, or at least the ones that are less, they contain less influences of modern, contemporary visions. So I thought that starting from the very old ones would, it would be a good start, clean
Mhm.
from other points of view of later artists.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I mean, originally, the first decks that we have were actually from Italy. So, I mean, you're very well placed in that
Uh,
regard. Have you
yeah,
been to any of the museums to see some of the sort of oldest ever decks?
I saw some of them in Ferrara, the city where I was living until last year, and there are some of this deck from Sport. Wait,
Visconti Sforza.
Visconti Sforza, not that right one because that's in Milan, but there is another one that probably because I mean all these nobility were like connected, and the Ducato di Ferrara, which was at the time the name of the place in the
Hmm.
castle, they would probably play a lot of cards
Yeah.
for many reasons. They were like the games that we play nowadays, such as Monopoly. And I've read something very funny about like how they would use them. They would, for example, use it, of course, in the evening when after dinner,
Yeah.
and the Lord will give randomly cards to all the members of the table, even to the servants, maybe.
Uh-huh.
So, it could happen randomly that the servant will be the empress and the Lord will be the fool.
Uh-huh.
So it was a sort of a game, that they would play and exchanging rules. Mm,
Fascinating.
yeah, very. I think it's very. I mean, that was probably one of the original reasons why they invented it,
Uh-huh.
before the hazard games for
Hmm.
taking money and then all the
Well, though
rest.
gambling has existed for
Yeah,
millennia, I mean, there's lots of evidence of, for example, gambling amongst the Roman soldiers 2,000 years ago, and I'm sure that there was plenty of it before that as well. So, gambling is something that's been around for as long as humans, I think.
yeah, probably.
At least betting on, who's going to do this or what's going to happen next. And in some ways, it's kind of connected to divination, really, if you think about it, because gambling is about what's going to happen next, and so
Hmm.
is fortune telling. So, you know.
Sure, I've never thought of that connection.
Uh,
I would think more of the connection with money,
yeah.
the god money. But yeah.
Yeah. And so you decided to go for a kind of traditional style deck. Do you read yourself, read the tarot cards?
Yeah, I mean, ever since I started to research, maybe in the first place, I started to search for the symbols in order to make it faithful with the old ones. But then, it kind of brings you in that mood. And I started to, I mean, once you learn, you see these symbols. It's a bit like when you learn to drive, and then until that moment, you have never noticed all the signs on the street. Then you
Mm.
know the meanings, and then you can read meanings everywhere.
Yeah.
And yeah, of course, you get fascinated, and it becomes another tool of expressing yourself, or to a tool of communication,
Hmm. Yeah.
to communicate with someone else in a subtle way without words, but with this mirror made of images
Mm.
in front of you and the other person. So yeah, my readings consist in this more than divination, I would say,
Uh-huh.
and a mirror that helps me to communicate with filtering
Hmm.
thoughts and words with the images.
Yeah, makes sense to me, absolutely. And so when you started sort of doing that, what was the deck that you used, or what is the deck that you use now until like your deck is
Yeah.
published and available for you to actually play with?
Yeah, I have a beautiful a beautiful Madeni, I think that's the pronunciation,
Uh-huh.
tarot deck of Marseille.
Uh-huh.
And then I have the Jodorowsky one, which
Uh-huh.
was given to me as a gift. And yeah, by speaking about the devil, Jodorowsky is a big influence to
Mhm.
me, like in general. I have known him since before the tarot passion.
Uh-huh.
Like since I saw some of his movies, such
Yeah.
as The Sacred Mountain,
Mhm.
El Topo, and then I read some of his books until I finally got into the Way of Tarot,
Yeah.
which is like an encyclopedia more than a book.
And
Yeah,
yet
and
it is also very, very readable. I mean, it's not like you're going, oh my God, this is so dull, like an encyclopedia. It's like every page is fascinating and he has all these different ideas, right?
yeah, like it's interesting how he has been examining numerology and esoterical stuff. I mean, a lot of things for me. Some of them were new, and some of them were very like maybe I heard of it, but I've never been deeply
Involved with it.
getting yeah involved.
Yeah. I mean, I found it really interesting because he has a completely different take on numerology to the one that you normally find, for example, at least here in the UK. So, a very different approach to the cards and what the numbers mean in that sense. So it's fascinating to find these different perspectives.
Yeah,
And with the deck, you also you chose to incorporate flower symbolism into your minors. Can you tell me a bit about that?
sure. Yeah, as I said, once I finished my major arcana drawings, I was struggling whether to make like the usual minor arcana of the Tarot de Marseille ones, which are very simple, very like it's all about the suits rather than other symbolism. And then I
Mm-hmm.
learned that actually there is a symbolism also in this
Yeah.
very like I wouldn't say minimalistic, but like different from other decks. And I thought I should find a way to make it maybe a little bit easier and a little bit less boring, I would dare to say, um, in order to have the cards more recognizable. Like each of them, you would have a hint immediately by seeing it. Like it doesn't have to be the number that you have to look for the literal Roman number. Sometimes you have to do that
Mm-hmm.
if you don't know the deck very well and you
Yeah.
don't recognize it from the decorations. So I thought, yeah, flowers, like I love flowers personally,
Uh-huh.
and they do have symbolism. And for example, in the 19th century, there were several books about the language of flowers,
Yeah.
and each of them, like what it means when you give it to someone, which it means something or something else. So
And what you
yeah,
choose to wear and where you wear it. Yeah.
exactly. So there is a tradition, which it might sound a bit old-fashioned nowadays, but I think, yeah, why not? I thought I'm going to use different species of flowers and make this deck like more attractive and colorful. And also, I love Art Nouveau,
Yeah.
like Liberty style. And so the symmetry of the cards and the decorations that in the regular decks are like more baroque.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that it would give like a more modern look
Yeah.
and also free from traditional decorations.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, you mentioned the colours, and that was something that struck me as well when I was looking through your images. That, for example, in the suit of swords, you use a lot of purples, and so it's quite different to the traditional coloration. And yet, for me personally, it works very well. I imagine other people will like it too. But what was your kind of thoughts behind that?
Yeah, I've been researching quite a lot about the meaning of each flower that I've used in my deck. It was not easy, I must say, because I mean, the internet is a big resource, but it's also leading you anywhere.
Yeah.
and these sort of things are also like there are so many versions. It's like Greek mythology, you know, like there are so many ends and you don't know, nobody knows which one is the real one. So in the end you have to make a decision and think, okay, with your instinct, you know, with your guts, you think, okay, I think this flower is the right one for the meaning of this card because it makes more sense, not only from what I read, but also with the colors. And yeah, and yeah, it was not easy, but it was one of the most fun parts of my research. And yeah, I think at the end the result is quite stunning. I mean,
very beautiful, yes, definitely. So you have an Indiegogo campaign going on for your deck, and in that you have a great video in which you mentioned that you were really inspired by both Berlin and by Italy. And with Italy, you know, I understand it more because, as I say, there's the old traditional decks, and a lot of the traditional decks were created there. There were great big centres for, you know, just making decks and loads of people making money from it, you know, way back in the 1500s and stuff. But what about Berlin? How did that inspire you?
yeah, I lived in Berlin for quite a long time, and living there was a life-changing experience. Like, I come from a town in Italy, and then I moved in the north of Italy for studying. But still, like, Italian cities are like the lifestyle in here is very uh, it's very peculiar, you know. You hang out with friends, you go for dinner. You don't go, for example, to clubs for several hours, like it can happen if you get into that environment. So Berlin is a city where people are capable to go to a club and stay there for many hours.
Uh-huh.
And there you have the chance to meet the most crazy people. I mean, a very big variety of people. Like there are artists, directors, you know, really people of every sort. And a lot of them have been an inspiration for me for this deck because in the meanwhile, I was learning the meaning of tarot in general. And, you know, you learn that each character has, I mean, it represents a side or another side of the human characteristics or attitudes.
Yeah.
So working on the deck and going partying were two things that were going more or less like, you know, with the same
Uh-huh. At the
at
same
the
time.
same yeah. And I think that's the inspiration. Like that's why my characters became let's say maybe more realistic than a traditional tarot de Marseille, where the figures are like these little middle-aged um, puppets, you know.
Yeah.
And also, I have to say, I love comics and I draw
Uh-huh.
comics. I mean, I'm an illustrator,
Yeah.
and so yeah, the characters became something different than the traditional. A lot of these people, like while I was drawing my characters of my tarot deck, I thought about these people who gave me like inspirations, and probably I infused my cards with this
Mm-hmm.
personality of these people. So
Yeah.
maybe I would say that's why they became more characteristics than the classic middle age little figurines.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're more vibrantly alive and younger as a general rule, would you say?
Oh, yeah, I guess they look young. Yeah, young and healthy. Yeah.
Yeah. And how are you finding it doing an Indiegogo campaign? Because I mean, that's a completely different sort of challenge for an artist, I imagine.
Yeah, this is a great experience. Like the campaign was launched, I think now 6 days ago,
Hmm.
and the beginning seems like it's going great. Like I wouldn't expect so much effect. Like yeah, like it's going very well. I'm really, really happy and grateful with all the backers and friends and family, but a lot of strangers as well. Like I'm surprised that like probably in these 2 years that I've been promoting my deck on Instagram and the other social media, the power of the hashtag.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible. What can that do? And yeah, it's going well. I hope it keeps going this way because it's meant to be a little down, like they say allegedly that the beginning is boom and then it goes a bit flat because all the people who were waiting for
Mm.
uh, are done. Like, so I hope that we will reach the goal.
Yeah.
And
Well, I think normally there's kind of a boost at the end very often because people have been kind of like, shall I, shan't I? And then as the deadline approaches, it's like, if I don't do it now, I won't do it ever. Oh, yes, I'm going to do it. So, I'm sure that you'll get another
yeah,
big boost towards the end. I think that's the normal pattern with these campaigns.
yeah, hopefully.
But I mean, in any case, with Indiegogo, it's kind of you get the funds anyhow, I believe, and then you sort of go for it with what you have. Is that right?
Yeah, like the kind of campaign that I did is the one, wait, I can't think of the right word, but it means like even though I don't reach the goal,
Hmm.
I will invest myself for
Mm.
making it,
Yeah.
which will be like actually not what I prevented to. So I hope that this doesn't discourage the people, to help me because the support is really important, of course. Like,
Yeah.
even though it's not such a big amount of money, but it's still like a good investment. And yeah, I hope that we will reach it like all together. At least I can cover the costs.
Yeah.
Like right now, even if I reach the goal, it's just for covering the costs of productions and shipping. And
Mm. And do you already have kind of a printing process in mind, like printers that you've discussed things with?
yeah, I've been researching a lot for that too because I wanted that the quality of the cards would be like the best,
Hmm.
as good as I could find and afford. Before I launched the campaign, I was sure that everything was ready for the after work. Like the
Hmm.
company is the best offer that I received because in Italy, like there were many. In Italy, they offered me to do very poor stuff. Like it was cheaper, but they wouldn't even include the little book inside. There wasn't the golden edge, which maybe it's not so necessary, but it makes it like a deluxe version. So I thought that because I don't know whether I'm gonna do a second edition or not. So I want this one to be the deluxe one,
Yeah.
nice, and I want to sell it off. Otherwise, I will have a big package of decks in my
Well,
room.
I was at a tarot conference with Ciro Marchetti a couple of years ago, and he said that he's made some decisions in the past that he ended up totally regretting. Like with one of his decks, he really thought it wasn't going to sell, and so he because he had absolutely loads of them, he just sent them to the dump, and then he was inundated with orders and he could have sold them all twice over. But, he had a
Wow.
little picture of, this is the dump and this is roughly where all my decks are that I just threw away because I thought it wasn't going to work and I was just so stressed with it. So, don't worry, these things work out.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you have any other plans for after this?
Yeah, for sure I will have it. But I think with tarot at the moment, I don't know if I'm gonna do anything related to, like, I've started already a new project because obviously this one, like, I don't have to draw anything anymore.
Mm-hmm.
My next project will be a comic
Uh-huh.
that I already started, and it's gonna be mythological inspired. Like
Uh-huh.
I love ancient Greeks and mythology, and I had this idea of talking about the life of Dionysus, the god,
Yeah.
because he's like a very controversial god. I think he was the
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 god of partying, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, we could say that the god of partying because he will go with his group of friends who were like very strange friends. They were satyrs and manades, which were like these drunk women, kind of crazy. Actually, they could be even more very aggressive to regular people who didn't want to party with them.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, he was half god and half man, and he became crazy because of Hera, because he was like another illegitimate son of Zeus, and so he started this trip, like this journey all over the world, escaping from Hera, and but he was mad because she made him mad,
Uh-huh.
and I mean, it's a long story. I cannot tell those all
It
right now.
sounds like a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and but it's going to be like the style is going to be like modern,
Hmm.
a mix of futuristic and epic, I would say. Like they are gonna wear clothes like
Modern day
things.
clothes kind of thing, or
Yeah, like a mix of classic and modern, and they have their powers are like mixed with technology as well. So this
Mhm.
is the idea.
Yeah.
Let's
Sounds
hope
like a
that
lot of fun.
yeah.
And will it be published in Italian, or how are you going to do that?
Oh, I would probably do it in English, like
Uh-huh.
to be more international.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, exciting. And I know a lot of people kind of use tarot to help inspire them in their writing. Is that something that you do as well, to kind of get clear on plot, or what is this character thinking, or anything like that?
Yeah, I use tarot for myself quite a lot. Like I love playing with it and see what by chance, they can suggest me to do something or something else. And yeah, maybe even about the choices of my next step in art,
Hmm.
in my art path. Yeah. Like tarot has been a good friend, I mean, if I could say so,
Oh,
in the last
absolutely.
3 years. Yeah, like it's like having the universe speaking to you in a way, and it's interesting how things can change because a tarot spread gave me an idea.
Yeah, definitely. Wonderful. Well, it sounds like you've got a lot of exciting things planned, and I wish you absolutely the best with your Indiegogo campaign. I hope that that will go brilliantly well, and I'm sure it will. As I say, there's often, a boost at the end as well, so I'm still rooting for stretch goals.
Thank you very much, Chloe, for interviewing me. It's been lovely, and yeah, I hope we will do it. We will have another reason to do it.
That sounds great. Thank you ever so much, Rosario.
Have a nice evening.
You too.
Bye.